To live well, a person must understand where their strength begins. The Stoics believed that this strength originates within. External admiration, approval, or love may be comforting, but they are unstable. What remains stable is the relationship you have with yourself. The principle of loving yourself is not based on indulgence or ego. It is rooted in the understanding that no virtue, no clarity, no discipline can be sustained if you do not first respect and care for yourself. To love yourself is to become a custodian of your mind and your actions. It is to live in a way that is guided by principle, self-awareness, and internal discipline. This video is a path through that principle. It is about loving yourself in the Stoic sense, building character, protecting your time, aligning your behavior with your values, and withdrawing from self-harm in all its forms. It is not about seeking comfort, it is about seeking clarity. Self-love, as the Stoics understood it, is the soil where strength grows. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Define yourself before the world does. If you do not define yourself, the world will. It will use comparison, status, trends, and pressure to assign you an identity. These external forces do not consider your values or purpose. They operate on visibility, popularity, and appearance. Their influence increases when you lack a clear internal direction. When you are uncertain, the world fills in the blanks. It offers roles and identities that may be convenient, but are not grounded in personal principle. The Stoics warned against this. They taught the importance of deciding who you are and living in agreement with that decision. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This process is practical. It begins by stepping away from automatic roles and labels. You ask yourself direct questions. What am I living for? What are the qualities I admire? What kind of person do I want to become, regardless of praise or recognition? These are not abstract reflections. They are foundations for daily behavior. If you say you value honesty, then dishonesty becomes unacceptable. If you claim to value discipline, then you must act with consistency. Self-definition is not about public statements. It is about aligning your small, repeated choices with your chosen identity. When you are clear about your direction, you stop relying on others for confirmation. Their praise or criticism no longer shifts your sense of self. You are not controlled by the approval of people who do not share your values. You do not adjust yourself to gain favor. This internal steadiness does not eliminate discomfort, but it protects your peace. You are not chasing identity. You are acting from it. Writing your identity in action requires repetition. It means making decisions that reinforce your principles, especially when they are inconvenient. A person who values courage must speak the truth when it is easier to stay silent. A person who values discipline must follow through even when tired. Each choice adds weight to the identity you are building. Each action is a vote for the person you have chosen to become. Without this foundation, it is easy to drift. You may find yourself adopting beliefs or behaviors that do not belong to you. You may copy the values of those around you simply because they are loud or common. You may live by habits that were never questioned. The Stoics trained against this by practicing self-examination. They reviewed their behavior each day. They measured their choices against their principles. They did not wait for the world to correct them. They corrected themselves. Loving yourself begins with this commitment. You love yourself enough to take responsibility for your character. You do not allow it to be shaped passively. You define the kind of life you are building, and you live in accordance with that vision. You respect yourself enough to act with purpose, even when there is no reward. You protect your identity from confusion and dilution by returning each day to the standard you have chosen. This is the beginning of strength. When you act from principle, you are no longer reacting to every change in circumstance. You move with intention. You think before you speak. You pause before you act. You review before you sleep. These patterns reinforce a sense of trust in yourself. You stop wondering who you are and begin living as the person you have chosen to be. Chapter 2. Withdraw from self-destructive thought. Thoughts shape actions. Actions shape habits. Habits shape lives. Each level builds on the one before it. Your thoughts are the starting point for every decision you make. They influence how you interpret events, how you treat yourself, and how you react to others. If your inner dialogue is filled with judgment, doubt, or shame, those thoughts begin to inform your choices. They lead to hesitation, self-sabotage, or withdrawal. These choices repeat and eventually form habits that limit your progress. A life built on these patterns loses direction and stability. Stoicism teaches attention to thought as the first defense against harm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This principle is observable. A person who constantly focuses on past failure begins to expect failure again. They anticipate rejection. They question their own value in silence. Even when they succeed, the reward is muted by inner conflict. Their mind becomes shaped by these thoughts, and the outer life begins to follow. On the other hand, a person who maintains composure and clarity of thought can act with steadiness in difficulty. Their behavior reflects control rather than reaction. Self-directed insults are not just passing thoughts. They become instructions. If you tell yourself that you are weak, you begin to act as though strength is out of reach. If you constantly relive mistakes, you create the illusion that your past has more weight than your present. Loving yourself begins by identifying these internal messages and removing their influence. You do not reason with self-contempt. You replace it with behavior that reflects responsibility. This is not denial, it is correction. Begin by observing your inner dialogue. Do this without trying to argue with it. Do not justify or defend each thought. Simply notice the tone and content. When you hear thoughts that lean toward self-criticism, mark them. Interrupt them without debate. Shift your attention to immediate action. Choose something physical, useful, or deliberate. Clean your environment. Organize your next steps. Focus on the task directly in front of you. Redirecting your attention in this way creates distance from the harmful thought. That distance weakens its influence. The Stoics taught that control begins in the mind. What you allow to live in your mind eventually spreads into your behavior. A disciplined mind chooses what it allows to continue. If a thought undermines your direction, you remove it with the same consistency that you would remove poison from food. This does not mean avoiding responsibility. You still reflect on your mistakes. You still evaluate your behavior honestly. But this process is done with structure and purpose, not emotional hostility toward yourself. You do not correct the mind by punishing it. You correct it by training it through repeated, intentional practice. A trained mind recognizes its own tendencies and adjusts before those tendencies grow into harmful behavior. Training the mind involves more than controlling thought. It requires consistent attention, daily review, and structured input. You shape the mind with the same care you would use to shape a tool. You monitor how it functions, what influences it, and where it falters under pressure. When you notice harmful patterns, you take deliberate steps to shift them by altering the inputs and habits that reinforce them. Steering thoughts away from harm requires effort. Harmful thinking patterns often operate in the background. They appear subtly as doubt, sarcasm, or mental rehearsal of failure. Left unchallenged, they gather strength. The first task is to bring them into conscious awareness. The next task is to interrupt them and replace them with stable, present-focused actions. This may include structured reflection, journaling, breathing techniques, or a return to small, useful tasks. Each of these practices redirects mental energy away from passive harm and toward constructive effort. Automatic judgment slows down when it is replaced with deliberate observation. Instead of labeling yourself as lazy, you review your actions. Instead of calling yourself weak, you examine where your preparation failed. This shift turns blame into data. The Stoics trained themselves to observe their inner world the way a physician examines a patient, without drama, with interest, and with a goal of healing. They aimed to understand the causes of their reactions so they could address the roots, not just the symptoms. Each time you interrupt a self-destructive thought and return to action, you build a pattern. That pattern tells your brain what is acceptable. If you consistently choose aligned behavior over emotional impulse, your mind learns to follow that route first. This practice does not remove discomfort, but it makes your response predictable and useful. Discipline is built by making the same small correction again and again until it becomes instinctive. Loving yourself means seeing the condition of your mind as something you are responsible for. This responsibility cannot be handed to anyone else. Others may support or advise you, but you are the one who must manage what thoughts take root and which ones are removed. If your internal environment becomes toxic, your judgment suffers. Your actions reflect that suffering. You begin to move without purpose or clarity. Progress stalls. A Stoic sees self-inflicted harm as waste. Cruelty toward the self reduces capacity. It creates confusion where order is needed. Your thoughts are not an enemy to fight. They are signals to interpret. By protecting your mental environment from patterns that attack your character, you create the conditions for measured behavior, steady judgment, and principled decisions. Your thoughts are the foundation for what comes next. If they are clean, focused, and examined, your actions will follow that form. If they are chaotic, indulgent, or hostile, your actions will reflect instability. Clarity begins with what you allow to circulate in your head. The mind must become a prepared space. That preparation includes daily reflection, evaluation of speech, and awareness of mood. It also includes protecting that space from influences that lead to disorder. When you eliminate judgment, resentment, and self-sabotage from your thinking, you create more room for clear strategies, consistent decisions, and calm problem-solving. Clarity supports strong habits. Strong habits are easier to sustain when your thinking is clear. These habits reduce uncertainty in your actions. They allow you to focus on essentials. With fewer distractions, you experience more stability. Stability gives you strength in difficult situations. You do not rely on emotion to carry you. You rely on what has been practiced and tested. This is why withdrawing from harmful thought is necessary. You are not doing it for temporary comfort. You are doing it to regain control of your direction. Mental command gives you the power to think clearly, to choose wisely, and to endure hardship with composure. These outcomes are not based on hope. They are the result of repeated practice. They begin with a single decision: protect the mind and act from strength. Chapter 3. Set boundaries that reflect your standards. People who love themselves set limits. These limits are not created to control others, but to clarify direction. A clear boundary is a reflection of internal order. It shows that your time, attention, and presence are being governed by purpose. Without limits, you are available to everything, which makes your priorities vulnerable to being shaped by the loudest voice or the strongest demand. When your actions are guided by external pulls, your energy is no longer directed toward your principles. It is redirected toward the needs of others, regardless of whether they align with your values. Boundaries are not emotional reactions. They are decisions based on values. A person who knows what they are building must protect that process from unnecessary interference. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You must know your direction. Without it, you say yes to things that serve no clear goal. You get pulled into arguments, distractions, and obligations that consume time but offer no return." Loving yourself includes protecting the limited space you have to act with clarity. To set boundaries, you must first identify your values. Without that foundation, limits become inconsistent and reactive. Values give structure to your decisions. They allow you to decide what matters, what strengthens you, and what belongs in your schedule. This clarity simplifies choice. You do not have to evaluate each demand from scratch. You already know what aligns with your priorities and what disrupts them. When your boundaries are built on values, they are not random. They are logical and consistent. Begin by reviewing your use of time, energy, and attention. Identify what pulls you away from important tasks. Identify who drains your focus. Identify patterns that cause frustration or delay. These are the areas where limits must be applied. Remove what reduces your concentration. Refuse what brings mental clutter. Decline what creates emotional confusion. Your energy is a resource. If you allow it to be divided by every demand, your direction weakens. The process of setting boundaries will challenge your comfort. Others may question your choices. Some may see your refusal as resistance. If you are used to saying yes automatically, your changes may feel unnatural at first. Discomfort does not mean you are wrong. It is a sign that you are stepping away from old habits. The difficulty of asserting a boundary is short-lived. The consequences of abandoning it affect your sense of control and progress. When you allow repeated interference, your priorities get lost in compromise. Boundaries are not permanent shields. They are practices. You maintain them by acting on them consistently. Every time you reinforce a boundary, you remind yourself of your direction. You act based on structure, not reaction. You do not make decisions based on guilt or fear of judgment. You evaluate what supports your role, your goals, and your well-being. Each decision becomes a small test of whether you are living by your values or abandoning them under pressure. As you grow more familiar with this process, you stop seeking justification for your limits. You do not feel obligated to explain or defend your choices to those who do not understand your priorities. This saves time. It reduces unnecessary conflict. You know what you stand for, and you act in accordance with that. Boundaries become a silent signal that you are serious about your life and focused on your principles. You begin to say no with certainty when your yes has a purpose. You stop accepting roles that conflict with your direction. You no longer measure your worth by how much you give away. You measure it by how well you protect what matters. Time spent in misaligned conversations or activities takes away from the effort you could invest in meaningful work. Protecting your time is a form of discipline. Protecting your energy is a form of strategy. Protecting your peace is a form of clarity. You do not have to respond to every demand. You are not responsible for managing the reactions of others. You are responsible for staying on course. Acting on your priorities keeps your path visible. This internal structure becomes the source of your confidence. It is easier to trust yourself when your decisions are guided by a stable framework. Each time you honor that framework, your sense of identity grows stronger. You do not doubt your limits, you reinforce them. Trust in yourself grows from consistency. You no longer feel scattered. You no longer speak from confusion. You move with calm precision. You understand the cost of every yes and measure it against what you are building. You live by standards, not pressure. This internal agreement builds emotional balance. You are less reactive. You are less entangled in the noise around you. Boundaries do not isolate you. They protect your space. They give you the capacity to engage with others from a grounded position. They help you navigate complex situations without losing your center. Loving yourself includes protecting your time, your values, and your peace from unnecessary damage. When you guard the space where your values are lived, you preserve the life that depends on them. That is the role of boundaries, preservation through structure. Chapter 4. Accept your past without dragging it. Everyone carries a history. Regret, mistakes, weakness, failure. These are part of every life. They exist as records of choices made under pressure, confusion, or inexperience. To love yourself is not to erase your past. It is to view it clearly, without distortion, and without allowing it to define your current direction. The past cannot be changed, but it can be understood. Its only useful function is instruction. The Stoics taught that the past is indifferent. It holds no moral weight on its own. It is outside your control and cannot be relived. What remains within your control is how you interpret it, what you learn from it, and how you choose to act going forward. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The past belongs to what happened. Your power lies in what happens next. The weight of the past becomes heavier when it is carried without examination. If you resist it, deny it, or try to hide from it, it gains influence. The mind replays events in search of resolution, but finds only emotional repetition. Regret turns into shame. Reflection turns into paralysis. This repetition brings no clarity. It drains energy and interrupts progress. The purpose of memory is not to punish. Its purpose is to inform your present with honest assessment. To love yourself is to extract value from your past without being defined by it. That means taking the lessons, identifying where you lacked preparation, where your judgment failed, or where emotion overruled discipline. These observations are not for shame. They are for rebuilding. They are for strengthening your next decision, your next behavior, your next standard. Moving forward with awareness is different from forgetting. You do not erase the facts. You integrate them into a complete understanding of your development. Past experiences become data points. They offer reference, not identity. You let them inform your judgment, not restrict your direction. When you carry these lessons without emotional distortion, they become useful. They help you build better standards, define clearer goals, and avoid repeating avoidable mistakes. You allow your past to sit in the background. You recognize it as part of your education. It shaped your current understanding, but it does not determine your next decision. It reminds you of what caused harm, what produced clarity, and what led to confusion. These reminders serve a purpose when used for evaluation. They lose value when used for criticism. When you stop using the past to attack your character, your mental space becomes more organized. You reduce noise. You reduce distractions that feed self-doubt. This allows for steady attention to what is happening now. You stop rehearsing pain and start investing in correction. You shift from regret to structure. Instead of asking what could have happened differently, you ask what must now happen next. This change in mental focus increases available energy. You are no longer using it to revisit scenarios you cannot change. You are applying it to choices you can control. This change builds discipline. It strengthens your ability to concentrate. It reinforces the principle of self-direction. Growth depends on the ability to release repetitive judgment. A mind that remains absorbed in past failure lacks capacity for forward motion. Your attention is limited. If it is trapped in unresolved narratives, you are less available to examine your present habits or refine your next steps. When the focus shifts toward action, Your energy becomes more useful. Your time becomes more structured. You no longer need relief from guilt. You need strategy. Peace is not created by revising the past in your imagination. It is created by shaping your current behavior with understanding. You make corrections based on what has already been revealed. The lesson is preserved in action. That is the only part that produces progress. You use your past as a reference to navigate with greater stability. The behavior that follows becomes the evidence that you have learned. You are still responsible for the direction you are taking. You are still capable of changing your course. You are still able to act with precision, even if your past was disorganized. The past cannot prevent progress unless you turn it into a reason to remain passive. If you believe that your past defines your capacity, you will treat present opportunity as unreachable. Instead, act with the awareness that you are still in motion. Each choice adds to the structure that supports your future. Treat yourself as someone who is designing a framework. Do not remain trapped in isolated memories. Let your attention return to the pattern of your behavior. The more clearly you act on principle now, the more distance you create from past mistakes. Let your current discipline replace the need for regret. Let your progress be proven in how you act, not in how much you remember. The Stoics approached the past with discipline. They did not allow emotion to distort the facts. They observed what happened, identified what could be improved, and turned their attention back to the present. Their method was not based on emotional closure. It was based on practical reflection. What is done cannot be redone. What remains must be shaped with intention. The past belongs behind you. Its value depends on how you use it. You do not erase it. You do not rehearse it. You observe it, extract what matters, and continue forward. Your focus stays on what must be built now. Your habits, your relationships, your decisions. These are the areas that carry meaning. The more consistently you focus on present tasks, the less space the past occupies in your thinking. This creates freedom to form new patterns. Your habits are no longer anchored to old identity. They are constructed from today's standard. You stop trying to redeem the past and start building a present that reflects understanding. This shift reduces emotional weight. It increases mental efficiency. It supports better choices and prepares you to face new challenges without hesitation. You honor the past by acting with more clarity than before. You act from what you have learned, not from what you regret. You apply what was previously missed. That is how strength is built, through present application of past insight. This is how you move forward with awareness. Chapter 5. Cultivate solitude as a source of strength. Solitude reveals how much of your energy depends on distraction. It brings attention to the mental clutter you carry without noticing. Many external inputs serve as a way to avoid difficult thoughts. Constant interaction, background noise, and continuous stimulation often prevent you from recognizing unresolved concerns. When you remove these inputs, you begin to hear the thoughts that were buried beneath them. These thoughts may include doubt, fear, or unfinished decisions. Solitude brings them into awareness. Loving yourself means learning to be alone without distress. This is not a preference for being alone. It is a skill. It is the ability to sit with your mind, observe what it produces, and remain steady. You begin to see how often discomfort drives unnecessary activity. You recognize how often you use conversation, entertainment, or motion to avoid facing your thoughts directly. Solitude removes those layers. What remains is the content of your thinking and the quality of your focus. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This is not poetic language. It is a functional idea. The Stoic trains their mind to be a refuge. an environment that supports calm, review, and direction. Solitude is not avoidance, it is preparation. You do not escape the world. You sharpen your ability to re-enter it with greater purpose. The pause strengthens the return. Solitude is a return to your mind, your beliefs, and your chosen path. Without the influence of others, you are better able to examine the accuracy of your thoughts. You evaluate your behavior without comparison. You refine your reasoning without interruption. You look at your principles and ask whether your recent actions align with them. This level of clarity cannot be forced into brief moments. It must be practiced through time spent in quiet review. In solitude, you become more self-sufficient. You learn to validate your choices without seeking approval. You confirm your direction based on values, not applause. You no longer require constant feedback to remain steady. You begin to live by internal structure. When that structure is clear, your solitude becomes stable. You are no longer uncomfortable without input. You are engaged in internal construction. Build habits in solitude that reinforce your discipline. Begin the day with quiet planning. End the day with review. Use silence to separate one task from the next. Clear transitions help reduce mental overlap. Schedule time where no communication is expected. Use this space to read, reflect, and realign. Solitude should become a consistent part of your routine, not a reaction to burnout. Reflection allows you to see what is unnecessary. It helps you remove behaviors that dilute your focus. It brings attention to where you overcommit or over-explain. In silence, you remember that much of life can be simplified. You do not need to respond to every invitation. You do not need to explain every decision. You return to what matters by seeing how little actually deserves your energy. Your self-respect grows in these quiet moments. You are no longer performing. You are no longer adjusting your behavior to match what others expect. You are acting based on clear internal design. Each decision reflects a measured process rather than impulse or approval seeking. The absence of noise allows you to observe your mind without distraction. You see what influences your mood, what shapes your priorities, and where your focus drifts when left unguarded. You begin to trust your process because it is built through repeated attention, not reaction. It becomes easier to rely on your judgment when it has been tested in silence. You see patterns in your thinking that need correction. You notice habits that do not serve your structure. This self-observation is the foundation of improvement. You refine how you interpret challenges. You identify unnecessary complexity. You gain awareness of the difference between what matters and what pulls your energy without purpose. This is what the Stoics pursued, a life designed by principle, maintained by discipline, and protected by solitude. A life where each thought has a place, each decision has a reason, and each action has direction. The Stoic does not separate their inner and outer life. They bring their internal clarity into their external actions. This integrity begins in solitude. Without the quiet space to observe and correct, clarity fades and distraction grows. You do not need an audience to confirm your value. You do not need external validation to justify your priorities. You only need a personal standard that you return to daily. This standard becomes stronger when you reinforce it in silence. Without interruption, your thoughts become more organized. You understand your next steps more clearly. You connect your thinking to your action without confusion or hesitation. In solitude, you create the internal structure needed for consistent behavior. You do not have to guess at your priorities. You have reviewed them. You do not have to mimic others. You have chosen your own path. The mind becomes a clean workspace rather than a reactive environment. In this space, you shape decisions that hold up under pressure. You plan with intention and adjust with control. Loving yourself means protecting this internal space. It means treating it as something worthy of attention and maintenance. When you neglect it, distraction becomes the default. Your time is spent on reaction rather than preparation. When you guard it, your actions carry more weight. You move with stability rather than scattered urgency. You prepare your thoughts before you speak. You review your direction before you act. Solitude is not a break from responsibility. It is where responsibility is defined. It is where your values are tested without noise. It is where your focus is restored. Each day that includes solitude helps stabilize your identity. It confirms the structure you have chosen and strengthens your ability to protect it. This practice prepares you to engage with the world from a grounded position. You are not easily moved by opinion or pressure. You are not seeking direction from others because you have already clarified your own. This internal preparation is the root of calm confidence. When your identity is supported by solitude, your actions reflect discipline. Your relationships become clearer, your commitments become deliberate, your mind becomes prepared. That is the strength solitude produces, an identity you can carry into any situation without confusion. Chapter 6. Stop earning your worth. Start living it. The Stoics believed that worth is based on character, not outcomes. You do not earn your value by achievements, praise, or external validation. You demonstrate your worth through your actions, decisions, and adherence to principle. To live well is to live with clarity, not to chase approval. When you try to prove your worth constantly, you live as a performer. Your focus shifts from doing what is right to doing what is rewarded. This weakens your internal foundation. When you understand that worth is inherent in disciplined action, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You no longer measure your value through external results. You stop using public reaction as a scoreboard. You begin to evaluate yourself through your ability to act in accordance with your principles. This redefines progress. Instead of seeking validation through outcomes, you focus on execution. You place your attention on the quality of your decisions, the strength of your follow-through, and your ability to remain steady under pressure. You stop tying your identity to the responses of others. You do not let praise inflate your ego or criticism reduce your direction. You observe your intent. You review your effort. You assess whether your actions match what you believe. This clarity improves your ability to stay consistent. It lowers emotional volatility. You build a more accurate view of yourself, grounded in action instead of appearance. You develop respect for your ability to stay aligned with your values, especially in private moments. You begin to act for the sake of integrity itself, not recognition. Living your worth means showing up with your full presence, regardless of who sees it. You begin each day with purpose. You carry out your tasks with care. You manage your time as a limited resource. You speak truthfully, even when there is pressure to remain silent. You make deliberate decisions, even when others hesitate. These behaviors are not based on reward. They are based on principle. The reward is the self-respect that comes from knowing you are living the way you are meant to. When you seek to earn your worth, your effort becomes distorted. You say yes when you want to say no. You take on tasks that weaken your focus. You tolerate situations that diminish your clarity. The desire for affirmation leads to overextension. You commit to too much and lose sight of what matters. You try to gain value by constantly proving yourself. This mindset drains your energy and weakens your ability to think clearly. You spend more time adjusting to others than refining your path. When you act from a place of enough, your choices become more focused. You are less affected by comparison. You make fewer reactive decisions. You take on only what matches your purpose. You no longer stretch your limits for the sake of acceptance. You assess your responsibilities through the lens of alignment. You ask, Does this task serve the person I am becoming? If not, you step away from it. The Stoics remind us to focus on the internal. Your task is to act with reason, discipline, and justice. The result of that effort is outside your control. Praise may come, it may not. The quality of your action does not change. Your responsibility is to your behavior, not the outcome. This includes how others interpret what you do. Approval belongs to others. Action belongs to you. Living your worth means staying centered on what you can influence. You regulate your speech, your focus, and your direction. You reduce dependence on external approval. You remove the pressure to perform. You replace it with the pressure to remain consistent. That is the kind of pressure that strengthens character. You do not need to prove that you are valuable. You prove that you are focused. You show that you are stable, prepared, and disciplined. That is what makes a person worthy of trust, respect, and influence. When you live from that posture, you stop chasing recognition. You live the principle instead. Chapter 7. Stop apologizing for your standards. Standards clarify direction. They help you decide where to go, what to say, and what to allow. When your standards are clear, your life becomes more structured. You avoid waste. You remove confusion. You reduce exposure to behaviors and people that do not support your goals. When you constantly apologize for your standards, you weaken your position. You create room for compromise where strength is required. The Stoics encouraged commitment to virtue. A life of discipline, justice, and clarity is not built through constant negotiation. It is built by choosing what is right and acting on it. When you apologize for your boundaries, your discipline, or your refusal to engage in distraction, you reinforce doubt. You signal to yourself that your standards are flexible, even when they are necessary. Living with principle requires firmness. You are not obligated to explain every choice. You do not owe your peace to the discomfort of others. When you have built your standards through reflection and aligned them with your values, you protect them. You express them with consistency, not apology. This builds trust in yourself. Each time you stand by your standards, you reduce internal conflict. You stop questioning decisions that you've already clarified. You act with less hesitation. You move through your day with direction instead of delay. This produces mental clarity and frees energy for your most important work. To stop apologizing is not to become rigid. It is to become precise. You know what supports your growth and what weakens it. You apply that knowledge through action. The result is a life that reflects thought, commitment, and strength. Standards are not burdens. They are tools. They make living with intention possible. Chapter 8. Be consistent when no one is watching. The Stoics believed that real character is revealed in private. The actions you take when no one is observing show your level of discipline and integrity. When your standards only apply under supervision, they are conditional. When they remain steady in solitude, they are stable. Self-respect grows through consistency. Each private act of discipline reinforces your identity. You become someone who does the right thing because it is right, not because it is noticed. Private consistency is a test of sincerity. It removes the influence of approval, praise, and recognition. Without those influences, the only measure is your principle. Do you train your mind when you are tired? Do you keep your word when no one would know if you didn't? Do you maintain order in your environment without being asked? These are quiet indicators of strength. Inconsistent behavior creates internal conflict. When your actions depend on being seen, you lose the ability to trust yourself. You begin to act for response, not for reason. This leads to anxiety and confusion. You constantly seek confirmation. You drift from task to task. Consistency reverses this drift. It builds a stable rhythm. It helps you focus on progress, not performance. To live with principle, your effort must be steady. You do not need to act with intensity. You need to act with reliability. Show up at the same time, keep the same process, maintain the same standards. These repetitions form a pattern that supports long-term strength. This structure builds calm. It reduces the need to push. You work without pressure because your rhythm is in place. Self-respect increases when your behavior matches your values. You reinforce your own identity by aligning intention with execution. When you consistently do what you said you would do, you build internal trust. That trust becomes a stabilizing force. It supports calm decision-making and helps reduce mental noise. You begin to carry your responsibilities with less strain because you are not in constant negotiation with yourself. You stop arguing with your own intentions. You stop delaying meaningful work. You stop searching for external permission to act. The need to explain your choices fades. You move into action without hesitation. This consistency simplifies your daily structure. It lowers resistance to routine. You no longer have to convince yourself to act. You expect it. You rely on it. Excuses become less frequent. You begin to see them as barriers to your direction. You recognize how often excuses disguise hesitation. You choose clarity instead. You measure actions by usefulness. You prioritize what supports your values and remove what weakens your progress. This shift is quiet but powerful. It directs energy into sustained effort rather than rationalization or delay. Consistency is the tool that turns intention into identity. It turns goals into behavior. It takes the abstract and makes it visible. Anyone can make a promise or write a plan. Few follow through without being reminded. The difference is not intelligence or inspiration. The difference is follow-through, the ability to repeat action without needing conditions to be perfect. This is what separates the focused from the distracted. It is not found in rare effort. It is found in stable rhythm. Repetition with purpose builds structure. Structure supports discipline. Discipline produces clarity. These are steps that reinforce one another. The Stoics followed this pattern. They reviewed their behavior every day. They examined their choices. They adjusted their conduct. This was how they ensured that their principles were active, not theoretical. Private effort is a form of leadership. It sets the tone for how you treat your time, your speech, your habits, and your thoughts. It shows that you are not governed by reaction. You are governed by structure. This builds personal reliability. You know how you will respond because your standards are in place. You do not wait for motivation. You move according to what you've already chosen. Each decision made without an audience still matters. It confirms that your direction is not dependent on being seen. It reflects maturity in your approach. It helps reduce the need for emotional swings or constant adjustment. The steadiness becomes visible. Others notice, even if you say little. Your conduct becomes your communication. Your seriousness becomes a quiet signal. It shapes how others respond to you. It sets expectations. You recover from setbacks without panic. You speak from principle without needing approval. You work from a position of internal readiness. This is what it means to lead yourself first. You do not perform your values. You demonstrate them in silence. You keep your word to yourself and allow that record to speak for you. Chapter 9. Remove what weakens you. Self-respect grows when you protect your energy. Anything that weakens your focus, your clarity, or your discipline must be identified and removed. The Stoics taught that peace comes from order. You cannot live with strength if your environment, your habits, or your inner dialogue work against you. Living well requires subtraction. It requires the removal of anything that dulls your purpose or clouds your reasoning. Begin with your environment. Look at where you live and work. Remove clutter that competes for your attention. Eliminate sources of noise that interfere with concentration. Simplify the objects, tools, and inputs that surround you. Your physical space should support calm and focus. You are more likely to act with intention when your environment reflects clarity. Then examine your habits. Identify which routines support your values and which ones distract you from them. Remove behaviors that create fatigue, delay, or disorder. Replace them with actions that reinforce readiness. Your daily structure should move you closer to your principles. If it does not, it must be redesigned. The same applies to your internal dialogue. Notice how often you allow self-criticism, overthinking, or mental drift to take over your attention. These patterns weaken your ability to remain focused. They make action heavier. You must interrupt and replace them with deliberate thought. Return your mind to the task. Strengthen the signal. Reduce the noise. Removing what weakens you is an act of self-respect. It shows that you are willing to protect your capacity. It shows that your time, attention, and energy are not available to anything that does not support your direction. The more you practice this, the clearer your identity becomes. You are no longer divided between what you want and what you allow. The Stoic understands that strength is not added. It is uncovered. It is already there, buried beneath distraction, clutter, and emotional noise. Removal is the path. Eliminate what clouds the mind. Strip away what disrupts your rhythm. What remains is clarity, steadiness, and discipline. These are not created by addition. They are revealed by cutting away what is no longer needed. Chapter 10. Live as the guardian of your own life. Loving yourself means becoming responsible for your full existence, your time, your thoughts, your choices, and your outcomes. The Stoics taught that the individual must become the guardian of their mind. This means watching over what enters your awareness, what shapes your beliefs, and what directs your attention. It means protecting your inner world with the same seriousness you would guard something of great value. To live as a guardian is to stop waiting to be rescued. You stop blaming circumstances, people, or the past for your current behavior. You begin to see that your role is to act with reason, clarity, and focus, no matter the condition of the outside world. This is not avoidance of hardship. It is ownership of response. You are not a victim of experience. You are the architect of your reaction. Guardianship begins with how you manage your time. You limit distractions. You reject commitments that pull you away from your principles. You design your routines to reflect your priorities. You do not drift. You decide. This level of structure supports your growth. It gives your days shape. It allows your values to become visible in action. It continues with how you manage your thinking. You do not allow fear to take root. You do not allow anger to direct speech. You do not entertain mental habits that reinforce helplessness. You replace them with deliberate practice. You return to principle. You hold your mind accountable. You treat your attention as limited and essential. To be the guardian of your life is to choose what you expose yourself to. You do not consume information without care. You do not speak without discipline. You are selective with your influences. You protect the clarity you have worked to build. This protects your ability to lead yourself through difficulty. The Stoics lived with this awareness. They did not expect life to remove challenges. They trained to meet those challenges with strength. They prepared their mind through reading, reflection, and action. They tested their reasoning. They sharpened their clarity. They remained composed by keeping their attention on what they could influence. You are the one who must protect your structure. You are the one who must follow through. You are the one who must keep yourself in motion. The path is internal. The work is personal. The reward is the ability to live without confusion. Loving yourself first is not a feeling. It is a daily discipline. It is the structure you apply to thought, speech, and behavior. It is the refusal to be scattered. It is the decision to act from principle, and it is the quiet strength of knowing that you are becoming the person you were meant to be, on your own terms, by your own standard, through your own effort.